The views and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the views of any on-site institutions unless explicitly stated.
What's up, everybody? My name is Steve Vanderwall.
And I'm Justin Klosser,
and we're your hosts of Cannabis Cum Laude, a podcast devoted entirely to cannabis. We're going to talk cultivation, business, medicine, science, politics, advocacy, culture, and everything in between. Because let's face it, the cannabis industry is complicated, it's robust, and it has a ton of moving parts. So it's going to be our job to help you understand it a little bit better. So tune in every Friday morning for a brand new episode, and if you have a question that you'd like to have us answered on one of our shows, email us at questions@cannabiscumlaude.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Cannabis Cum Laude. Steve and Justin here, and today our conversation is going to be all about terpenes with none other than Jon Schwartz of Boveda. How are you today, John?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for the time. We know you're out in California, so we got a little bit of a time difference, but I'm excited to jump into terpenes, learn a little more about Boveda today and kind of your experience in building the company. But I think that as, you know, before we get into it, I want to ask you what is probably a really elementary question, but I think is necessary. What exactly are terpenes?
Terpenes are the organic compounds that are in plants, the aromatic compounds that are in plants, which you smell in a cannabis plant, in a fruit tree, or pine tree, or any other plant in nature, or tree.
And so what role do they play in the experience when you're consuming cannabis?
Well, I mean, if you think about terpenes in aromas and aromatherapy, it's obvious that scents affect us. Like if you smell something like cut grass, for example, you have a memory. If you smell pine trees, it may give you a certain sensation. Lavender may relax you. Frankincense may also reduce anxiety. You know, another terpene may put you to sleep. Another one may energize you. So they all play a role in everything, and it's the sense they're around you. And they're in the cannabis plant, so that's being expressed through the cannabis plant. So it's part of the whole experience. I mean, once you're shopping, or if you're growing the cannabis plant in your garden, you're attracted to a certain scent, the insects and everything else that also is attracted to it, and the colors. But the smells are what really bring you into it, and what pull you to her. The plant. So as it's dried and cured, it starts to produce, you know, these terpenes. They start to off gas into the environment. So that's when they're dried and they're put into turkey bags. They smell so good. So like as the distributor's going out there and shopping wholesale for his pounds, for his units, he's sticking his head into the bag and he's smelling it and he's getting a certain sensation and he's looking for like gas, like those are terpenes, gas or cheese or fruit or something. So it's all part of the experience. And then it gets down to the supply chain through to the consumer, and they're in the store. And if they're in a state where you can smell it behind the counter, they're looking at all the flowers and how they look, but they're smelling that you want to smell them to see how it smells. And ultimately, you're going to grind it up. You're going to put it into whatever you're going to smoke, and you're going to smoke it. And the scent is like turning into the flavor. It's associated with the flavonoids, right? So it's what you taste. It's like what goes into your mouth and what you're ingesting. So it plays an important role in all of it. As you can see, is like if a certain terpene had an energizing effect through that process, from first communicating with it, which is like just smelling the plant, to like smoking it and consuming it and ingesting it, it would produce that sensation within your body, whether it's relaxing, whether it puts you to sleep or energizes you or reduces pain or another effect that cannabis plant could have.
Yeah, I think you know, as the cannabis industry matures, I think we're starting to see the attention shift away solely from THC. You know, that's what the industry's always been about, is THC and potency. But now we're realizing that terpenes are really kind of like the shamans that guide the cannabis experience, which is why some cannabis you consume makes you tired, or some makes you creative or talkative or energized. That's not really the entirely due to the amount of THC. It's due to these terpenes. And it's just fascinating. We're learning a lot more on how these, you learn about things like limonene and alpha pinene for clarity, and all these things that are also in nature in other ways besides cannabis, but they're really profound in the cannabis plant. But I guess my guess is that there's probably a balance of, optimal amount of terpenes. Is a higher terpene percentage better? What's optimal?
Like the terpier, the better. It doesn't mean that you need to have like a low THC necessarily, but you want a high terpene profile. I do personally. If I'm going out and I'm looking for something that I want to consume, I'm looking for like fruit, orange. I'm looking for cheese or gas, and I'm looking for THC as well, or maybe a combination of THC and CBD or other minor cannabinoids. When you talk about like whole plant and entourage effect, it's about all of it, right? So it should be all of it, and all of the terpenes that you're attracted to or that you're looking for some relief, and the cannabinoids and how they work together. For example, a high THC, like with a high CBD also, because like high THC may induce anxiety. And if you're using it for anxiety, it doesn't work, right? So if you have high THC with high CBD also, then that will cut the anxiety and make it more enjoyable experience for you. That doesn't mean necessarily that you need less THC, you just need something to like counteract it. But it would probably have like, you can have a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1, 6, whatever, up to 30, whatever you want, THC to CBD and vice versa. So what's best for you in addition to the terpenes? For me personally, I find like my favorite grower is a friend of mine who, he doesn't test everything. He doesn't grow anything for the commercial use only, and he's hunting for genetics that are having a certain effect, and usually have very, very high terpene profile. And like some of them have a high THC as well. But that's what I meant to say, 30%, for example, and really terpene as well. So like that's what I would look for, really potent and really terpene. And I think that's what like the people who really seek out like the strongest and the best cannabis look for, like high THC and high terpene profiles. Like people are like, oh, everyone's saying like, oh, no one, like everyone only goes at THC. I don't think that's true. I mean, people are going after high THC, but they want it to smell a certain way, and it's in a certain effect because they don't want it to give them like that high anxiety. They want to like bring them down and like loady, and that strong smell gives them that feeling, right? Totally. So they're already looking for it, but they just weren't talking about it, maybe, or calling it terpenes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's judge on whether their cannabis is good or not comes through their nose, right? Initially, like, I mean, I guess a little bit of sight too. If it's covered in trikes, oh my God, that's so dank. But like, chances are, if it doesn't smell good, you're not going to be all that interested in packing it up for yourself, right? And so I think you could almost say that terpenes are synonymous with bag appeal.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think that, we talk a lot about consumer education. And, one of the things that we need to be teaching people when you go and buy cannabis is learn how to read a COA and a terpene profile. Because if you know what does what and how, you can just look at the documents and say, okay, judging by this level of pinene or this level of, beta caryophyllene, this looks like it might be good for me. Kind of, rather than relying on the bud tender, which you should rely on a bud tender. But obviously, if, you want to be a truly educated consumer, learn how to read your COAs and terpene profiles, and you'll be able to dial in, what cannabis is good for you, sooner than later. So
imagine they took a few billion of that stimulus and threw it at like cannabis science to figure out like all of the cannabinoids and all of the terpenes and what they were all good for, and they just gave it to everyone for all of their needs. Like, isn't that so ridiculous?
Like
that's what you're saying is like, it's all, if it was all tested and everyone knew what it did and we all could just go for it, it would be a lot easier, all naturally. But there isn't that information doesn't even exist, like barely. Like the COA with terpenes, it's so hard. Not all flower is sold with terpene profile out here in California.
Really?
Dispensaries. Yeah.
Is it not mandated? I'm assuming what's mandated.
Maybe
for
I'm
testing?
wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've definitely bought flower that wasn't labeled with terpenes. I don't even read the law, but I should.
It's expensive too. I mean, out here, even for testing like CBD products in New York, if you're a full panel test, at least where I go, and this is pretty common, if you're running, COA, microbials, all the, that stuff plus terpenes, you're looking at $500 to $600 a pop per batch per SKU. And if you're turning over a weight of, 5-6 cultivars every 15 days, something like that, you're pissing money, So I understand people not wanting to drop $4,000 to $6,000 every couple weeks on testing, but you should, if it, and from a quality perspective and from a consumer equity perspective, yeah. But it is pricey.
Yeah, I agree. Like my friend I was talking about before, he's got like 300 like unique cultivars. And he can't test them all. He doesn't have the money to test them all, but he wants to know like more. He's going with his nose and his intuition, but he wants to go with the science too. But like, what do? You go out and like raise money from some guy in Canada to go get all of your cultivars tested to see how you can help everyone.
And they're gonna say, "All right, what's the ROI?"
Right?
Not sure.
It might even be for somebody like that who's got that many different genetics they're trying to test. It might even be worth it to just like hook up with a scientist and learn how to do maybe the HPLC analysis and do it yourself. Like if you could get a hold of a known standard, it would be way easier,
Yeah. I mean, you want to get the license here is the issue. Like you have to have a license to do it. So that's where the money is. So no matter what, it's money. Money.
It's all money. Whoever invents the at-home, HPLC kit where you can test everything for cheap is going to be the ones that are going to be making the big bucks. But you're right. At the end of the day, it all comes back to money. And this industry is hard because there's a lot of money and there's also a lot of restrictions and regulations. And it's money is a difficult animal in cannabis.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, I want to dive into Boveda a little bit and hear a little bit about your origin story and kind of how you guys got going.
All right. And I just I hope that you know that I am not the founder of Boveda. I don't know if you thought that I was. I didn't even realize until we started that might be the case, but I've been with Boveda for 2.5 years. I've been in the cannabis industry since 2014. I co-founded this company, Cali Gold. It's an edible company. My partner, Daniel, he just recently bought the company back from the company that bought us in Canada and, kind of destroyed the brand. And he's trying to revamp it. But we did, I would say, strain-specific chocolates, but now I don't even say strains anymore. So cultivar-specific chocolates out of Berkeley. And we sold to 120-plus dispensaries throughout California. That was my background. And then I came to Boveda in 2019. After selling that to these guys in Canada and getting fired. And I've been with them since the beginning of 2019. Their origin story is that they've been around for 24 years, I think, since 1997, when these 3 living co-founders were looking for a way to solve this problem with cigars. They were cigar smokers, I guess. They were getting into it. And like one guy, I interviewed one of the co-founders who's also an inventor and like a patent holder for many things. And he told this story like a couple months ago. So it's much better when he tells it.
Sure.
He's 81. I think he's 81 years old. I can't remember exactly, but I'll do my best. So 1997, they found this humidor or something. They wanted to like solve this problem for like an on the go humidor, which is like this wood case you can bring your cigars, and whatever led to one thing. And then one guy said like the cigars are dry, and then like they found this other guy, Bob Essie, who's still alive and still works for Boveda, worked for General Mills in the past, and he did packaging. Like he did stuff like figure out how to make Wheaties stay fresh until it got to the consumer. And what was that commercial with Wheaties? Something about like fresh breakfast. Got to get your Wheaties, right?
Yeah.
Hilarious. General Mills. So he started with them, with these guys, as to solve this problem, and with this other guy, Dr. Sari, and they figured that the best way to keep cigars fresh long term would be with salt and water, just like kind of like if you think about how like sauerkraut and pickles and things have been preserved over time is with salt, but they had to come up with this packaging that could pass the water molecules off into the environment without it getting wet and all that stuff. So that's where the technology came in. So they patented this thing with salt and water in these sachets. They created this product they called the Humidipack. They sold it to the cigar industry. It took them a really long time to get into that industry. Finally, after I think it was 5+ years, they got in with the major cigar manufacturers. They convinced them that it would be better to be manufacturing the product in Dominican Republic, wherever they manufacture cigars, put a Boveda in there, ensure that the quality that the cigar stayed fresh by humidifying, keeping it humidified all the way to the storefronts who were selling cigars, who had humidors, but then also the other problem was people brought them home and they didn't want to have, I don't know how many cigars I've ruined in my life because I didn't have a humidor. Well, they created this package. All you had to do was throw it in a bag and boom, and you're good. And it kept the cigars fresh. And they did that for a while until they realized one day they were getting all these orders out of Humboldt. And there was this photograph in the newspaper of like 100 pounds, like a box of weed, that got caught somewhere in the Midwest. And there was a Boveda in the newspaper.
Nice.
So they realized that they were using it for cannabis. And then around 2012, I believe, I don't know, somebody, another friend, associate, told them that they needed to change the SKU, the humidity level for cannabis, because it's different than tobacco. Tobacco 72% relative humidity or 69% relative humidity, and cannabis needs less. So they figured out what the right amount would be, between 55 and 65%, and then created these two SKUs for cannabis in 2012, I believe, 58% and 62%. And since then, they've had a lot more tremendous growth because of the cannabis industry itself growing so much, the opportunity itself, like the mission statements, it being everywhere that flower is present. Because if you cannabis, people stored it with orange peels or tortillas or something, which would bring mold potentially into their flower. And this solves, it's actually a perfect solution, that they didn't intend for cannabis, but it's a perfect solution because it's a perishable item. It's it's going bad from the minute it's cured until it's consumed. It's off-gassing terpenes. Terpenes are being off-gassed into the environment. The trichome is losing moisture, which means it's getting drier, then the keef might end up on the bottom of the bag. The flour is drier, you've seen flour that you can grind in your fingertips. That's too dry. And it's not bad only because it's dry. It's bad because when it's getting dry, the terpenes are evaporating. That's what happens. And that's why when you stick your head in the big turkey bag, it smells so good because all the terpenes have evaporated from the flour. But it's not really good because what you really want is to smoke it and taste the flavor. So, anyone who says differently, I would actually challenge them to try it for themselves and to see what happens after you put flour in and you grind it and you smell it and you smoke it afterwards with a Boveda versus without a Boveda. That's where we are. And it's tremendous growth because there's cannabis markets opening all over the world. And in all of those markets, there's opportunities for us to work with cannabis growers, cannabis brands, distributors who are working with smoke shops. You know how it goes. There's hydro stores open all over the world. Cannabis is spreading, and with that, Boveda. It's it's the solution to a problem that the whole cannabis industry has. So it's really incredible, actually. I wish it was my company.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, from a commercial perspective, every day that a product isn't sold is lost value. And all of a sudden you add in this solution that's really inexpensive, especially if you're buying thousands at a time, you know what I'm saying? it's a high value product that, if you're running a cultivation facility or a dispensary, your shelf life of your products are now way longer. I want to go back to what you were talking about the two packs specifically for cannabis, the 58% and the 62%. What's the difference in like 4%? I'm new to this. So like why 58 and 62, and how much of a difference is there in that 4%, gap?
It's preference. That's what I say. For example, I don't like 62 for like what would go into packaging for me personally, because I don't like when it goes out too much. Like some people like a really slow smoke. So 62 would be slower. It might go out 2 or 3 times when you're smoking a joint, in my opinion. So I would go to a 58. That wouldn't happen. But if I was storing cannabis in the back end, like moisture, you can lose 4% fairly quickly if it's taken out of the if it's taken out of the packaging, and most importantly, if there's not a Boveda to regulate the humidity. So Boveda, which I didn't say correctly before, what they created was 2-way humidity control, because you've seen a desiccant before. And a desiccant is just drying something out. Like you put that in beef jerky and you make sure it stays dry, but it doesn't add moisture too if you have to. So like in Florida, they take our 49%, for example, because it's so humid down there. It's like moist, like you were asking me before in an email about mold. That's the problem they have in Florida or in a place like Colombia, because it's so moist. There's so much moisture. So the Boveda is pulling out as much moisture as possible down to that 41% because it's so humid. And once you take it out of that packaging, it gets moisture back right, it's like so quickly. That's why they bring it to 49, because they know like once they open a jar, it will go up to 55 pretty quickly. I'll buy flower in the dispensary in California and it will be like at 40% relative humidity or 45% or maybe 50%, rarely over 50%. I'll throw a Boveda 58% or 62%. It will get up within 24 to 48 hours. It will get up to that level. And I can test it with a water activity meter. That's what I would do. So the difference between 62 and 58 is preference. If you are, you should try both, honestly, to see what you like, because I know a lot of people prefer 62%, and a lot of people prefer 62% for storage because it's more water. So at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents, like we said before. It's like $5 or $6 a retail for like 1 pound bag of, like, for the retail consumer. That's not a brand or a grower. That's not a commercial price, for example. And you could gain 10 to 30 pounds, 10 to 30 grams in 1 pound. What's the wholesale, what's the retail price of a gram? Somewhere between like $3 to $6. I don't know.
That's a good point.
30 to maybe $100 a pound. That's like a lot. It could be like a 10% gain on every pound that just by throwing in a little Boveda pack. Okay. So the 4% would be good if you're really worried about the weight, because like I said, once you take it out or once you transfer it to packaging, you could use the 58% if it was like going to the final packaging. You're trying to get like that perfect kind of like smokable cured. I would go with the 58. That's me.
So with these being 2-way, obviously they are still a desiccant. And so if you're putting it in there, maybe right off the plant, you're kind of using it as your cure, or when it's a little bit more moist, and it's drawing that water out. Is there any risk that it's going to pull terpenes with it? And are you going to get like terpene loss from that desiccation?
No. So that's not what's happening. What's happening is if it was too humid, it would be pulling moisture out, but it's also hydrating it. It's creating a monolayer. So it's like a thin layer, micro thin layer of water around the flower, micro thin layer of water around the flower. We call it a terpene shield. It's a monolayer, and that prevents any of those terpenes from off-gassing into the environment. So if you, like you were talking before about testing, if you went and tested the terpenes, in the one with the Boveda, I would put my money on it, saying that there's more terpenes in the sample with the Boveda versus the one without the Boveda. It's not pulling the terpenes away; it's preserving the terpenes. That's why we say save the terps.
Okay, John, real quick, just since you brought up the monolayer, Fitz, that's where we want to have picture number 1 come up. I pulled a picture from your guys' website just to kind of let our viewers be able to see what this kind of looks like as far as over top of a trichome.
Yeah, it's hard to conceptualize unless you see it, but it makes a lot of sense. Now, if with these monolayers, 2 things. A, weed feels a little bit damp, right? Is there any risk of mold? Any increased risk of mold with the liquid monolayer?
That's the reason why and the reason why they created this SKU for cannabis was because the tobacco leaf prefers a higher humidity level, 69% and up, and cannabis they found in our testing, which is scientists, who've been doing packaging and working with different plants and food for a long period of time, that below 65% there was no risk of mold. So that's why it's 62.
Okay. And a follow-up question, what I noticed is with my pack-in, sometimes when I have it ready, it doesn't smell as terpy as it normally does, but when I break it down in my grinder, it's like punches you in the face. I think that's a good thing when you open your bag. When you're smelling terpenes, you're smelling volatilization, right? So when you open it and it doesn't smell, that's a good thing because they're still there, but they're not releasing, into the atmosphere. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. The terpenes, the nose hit that you get in your jar, your bag, or wherever you're smelling, are evaporating into the environment. They're in the headspace. They're right there in the headspace. So that's why you're smelling them. Like when you have the Boveda pack, you grind the flower, the terpenes are unlocked. That's why you get the boom. And then associated with that would be the flavor too, right?
Yeah.
Fresh flavor coming in.
Yep.
Absolutely. So can we talk a little bit about some of these terpenes specifically themselves? Like what maybe a couple of the main terpenes and maybe like what kind of flavors are associated with them?
Well, first of all, I am not a cultivator and I am not really a terpene expert per se.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I like no flavors. Like I'm going to use my nose and I know what I'm attracted to, like limonene, for example. This fruity flavor, it's a lot of time it's associated with like a sativa. It has an energizing effect. Kind of all makes sense, doesn't it? Like an orangey kind of scent, like kind of lifts you up and energizes you, right? I think that's limonene, or it's limonene. So lemony scent, citrus. The tange, like pinene, for example, it's like the scent of pine. What are the scents, like which terpene specifically are you attracted to? Do you know?
I'm a big fan of beta caryophyllene. It's got that peppery kind of, I feel like, at least, granted, you have to realize we've been in an illicit market, so names are not necessarily always 100% what they are. But I find that in a lot of the cookies that we get in New York, that kind of peppery taste. For me, I like a lot. I also do like the limonene as well. That's I would have to say that's probably my favorite. It's such a fresh flavor, fresh in the nose. It's it's truthfully probably one of the most pungent out of all of them. Like when you have especially on a fresh plant, if you have something that's exhibiting that limonene, it's just like you could smell it from across the room, right? It's wild.
Yeah,
love it.
I like limonene too, because I tend to have my daytime, like my working weed, and I have my nighttime, like my chilling weed. And you don't want to smoke, something like a tangy or something right before you go to bed, because before you know it, idea, creative, whiteboard. There's a time and place for that. So I always tell people, she's like, oh, what do you want to use it for? What are you looking for cannabis for? Oh, I want to relax. Okay, maybe go with something that has more linalool in it or more, drawing a blank or something, during the day, something with alpha pining. There's this, I think it is in Japan, where they have these like coniferous forests in the cities where you go and do like a cognitive reset. So you go into these coniferous forests and there's a focus aspect to alpha pining that's really powerful. So if you have a cannabis that's high in alpha pining, that's probably going to help you maybe read or do some work or write a paper or something. So you kind of want to, based on your activity and time today, is a good time to decide, what terpenes that you want to see in your cannabis, because you can have two very different experiences.
I kind of think we brought up a couple good points that we haven't necessarily made abundantly clear, is that like terpenes are not just a cannabis thing. Like they do make the cannabis experience what it is and the most amazing thing. But terpenes they're everywhere, right? They're in your orange peels, they're in your flowers. That's why they smell so good. They're in everything. Like
essential oils. The essential oil market is the terpene market. Unfortunately, the essential oil market is predominantly been dominated by multi-level marketing and shit like that, which kind of gave them a bad rap and kind of this snake oil type of mantra. But the reality is they are terpenes. They are the same thing that comes in the cannabis plant. And there's a lot of science that says terpenes are medicinal. So I know people tend to, crap on the essential oil market. And I used to, until I realized, oh wait, my whole industry is, in terpenes. So terpenes are everywhere. They're the foundation of aromatherapy. And it just so happens that cannabis. What's that?
It's aromatherapy.
It's aromatherapy. It's exactly right. I wanted to ask. Justin is a very talented cultivator. What are some techniques that you use to help increase terpene expression?
Oh, so I don't necessarily know that I have any scientific methods to increase terpene expression. As far as cultivating goes, you want to make sure, as long as you're in a legal area, I would advise against a carbon filter, because I do think that those have a tendency to pull some of the smell out. Definitely, as far as terpenes go, drying and curing is 100% the most important part. You can increase or rather reduce the degradation of the trichomes, and I'm assuming also terpenes with that, by before harvest incorporating a dark window. Some people do like 24 hours. Some people do crazy things up to 3 days. But I personally like to land somewhere between a day and a half, 2 days, whenever it's convenient for me to go back.
And what do you mean by dark window? Just killing the lights before you chop?
Yep. So you leave your plants before you chop. You leave them right there in your pot, your soil of your. I don't know if they do it in hydro, truthfully, but maybe you could do it in hydro. There might be some weirdness to having all that water in a dark area for an extended period of time. Could be interesting, but maybe they do it. Please, somebody leave a comment and let me know. But so you leave your plant in your soil and you just cut the lights for the last 2 days.
Okay.
And then I try to, and if you don't want to do that, if you're feeling nervous about mold, if you got excess high humidity or something like that, then what I would advise is to just chop before your lights come on the next morning, so that they at least have that overnight of dark period.
Is there any sort of I know I've seen how's that shit? The terp tea? Are there any special nutrients or stuff that you can add to bring out terps?
So they say that microbes have a lot to do with it. I think the science is out a little bit, maybe not. But there's also, I know adding like molasses, which I think kind of functions as a microbe feed, tends to help build that stickiness or sweetness tendency. Anecdotal evidence in that one. But that's what I would recommend when you're doing your flush at the end. Maybe I like to run like an enzyme to clean the root zone, like hygrozyme or something like that, with molasses. And sometimes I throw humic acid in there. That's just trying to do like you like to do and add a bunch of things in.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Until Tad was like, don't do that.
Yeah. Tad was like, yeah, that's wrong. No, he wasn't really. But
all right. Well, we're coming up to the end of the show. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about anything new that you guys are working on, what's going on at Boveda, anything that you're looking to plug or that our audience should know. Have at it.
Yeah, well, we're working on a lot of new projects, products that we're taking to market, different SKUs for the cannabis industry. Um, like I said before, there's only growth in front of us and new markets that are going to be legalized, and new growers and grow shops and smokers and people in the industry. So we're going to have more and more products for brands. We're really focused a lot on growers, obviously, and working through the hydro stores, but also working with different brands and commercial growers throughout the industry. So definitely anyone who's thinking about it, reach out to me so I can show the science and explain a little bit more about this terpene shield and why you can save so much money by working with us. Like I explained before, like that 10 to 30 grams per pound per unit.
That's crazy.
And then from cure to consumption, like how you can pass off, guarantee the consistency to the consumer, because growers always say, and I'm not saying anything against anyone, but like the product leaves your facility and it's great. You know it, like you can protect it with all the tricks you have. And to do all those tricks, like you need to watch and like make sure this is right and that's right and make sure everything is right. But if you're not there to do it, like there's a good chance it's not going to happen, right? So, well, but it's like insurance, first of all, but also it's like that money back by keeping that moisture level high when it gets to the consumer, and then guaranteeing that consistency until it gets to the consumer. So, new products that we're creating that are a lot of them are for brands in the industry all over. New York is coming online. I'm from New York. I'm from downstate New York, Westchester. So, any licenses that you guys are working on over there, let me know, let us know, anyone in the industry, however we can help. It's really about service. It seems like you guys have been doing this for a while out there. You're in it. You know how it is. Like every market is different. It's local everywhere. Like New York is huge, Rochester, Albany, Buffalo, New York City. And we want to be in all of those places, helping all of you, while you're setting up your grows, while you're figuring out how to protect that cannabis and preserve those terpenes and guarantee that product until it gets to the consumer. Because if you're building a brand, then you need to develop consistency, and the consumer at the end of the day is going to start looking for like that exact terpene profile. So if you do it once, you have to keep doing it over and over and over again, like the same exact way. That's the way they're going to want it eventually. So we need to figure out a way to do that, and that's a solution that we're going to give. So coming out with these new products, reach out to me. Anywhere in the world, I'll connect you to the right person within our company, wherever you are, and you guys, and anything that I can do, we can do. I'm here in California. Reach out to me. Let me know.
I actually had a question that kind of popped up in my head while you were saying that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So when I'm using these, do I still want to like hang dry my plant, or can I go right for the Boveda?
Dry it and then go for the Boveda.
Okay.
But again, I'm not the grower, so like I don't like to give out that advice. But yeah, cure to consumption, like curing, dry it and Boveda.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We do have actually two more quick pictures just that I pulled from the website that I think are important for our viewers to be able to see. Yep. And so there's I really liked on your website how you had the 3 main takeaways there for using Boveda, and they are just that simple touch test will tell you when it's time to replace, which I just feel like that's so user friendly, right? Like you can tell when it's starting to dry out, you got to get a new one. The more you use, the longer they last. I feel like that. It sounds counterintuitive, but when you think about the technology of it and how they're regulating humidity. So if everything is more at like the same humidity instead of having one pack trying to keep the whole jar stable, it makes sense to me that they would last longer, right?
Just divides it out amongst a bunch of them, right?
You got a bunch of them handling a little microclimate. Yeah. They don't have to handle as much of a load. Yeah. They last longer.
Exactly. They don't have to work as hard. And also like the better the container, the less they have to work and the longer they'll last.
And the more you expose it to air, the harder it has to work. Now, this one kind of is right. Really simple and common sense. Like if you're keeping it open to the humid air, it's going to keep fighting the humid air or vice versa.
You
if
beat
it's
me
too
to
dry,
it. Yeah, I
depending.
cut you off. Sorry, I didn't even know you already were gonna say it.
Oh, you're good.
Last thing, where can people find you? I know that we met on LinkedIn. You had a great presence on LinkedIn, a lot of great content, lot of followers. I was happy that we were able to connect. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm making the most content and cannabis stuff. Jonathan Schwartz. Maybe it's under Jonathan Mark Schwartz. I don't know. Boveda, you should find me. I'll be there. I'm focused on doing content. So any more podcasts or things that people are doing and videos and industry stuff, I'm definitely interested in doing that. Also, I lived in Colombia for 8 years, and I'm doing trips back down to South America, to Colombia, to like near the Amazon and Putumayo. So if anyone's interested in that, I'm going there a lot.
For non-cannabis medicinals, right? Didn't I saw a couple posts talking about some other non-cannabis medicinals, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of where like humanity is going anyway these days. But I lived in Colombia for 8 years till 2017, and while I was there, I did a lot of ayahuasca with different communities down there, and I really like mushrooms and microdosing them.
Yeah.
And other things, like when they took mushrooms from when I was younger. Not always like the right way necessarily, but figure it out ultimately.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and like I believe in, like, first of all, the like decriminalization of all plants and fungi and everything, because like that's our human right to do whatever we want to. Actually, not even if it was to plant anything, I think we should be able to do if we want to, because LSD also, and anything that like can help you and make you feel better. And it's all about health and wellness. And the thing is about like the ayahuasca, like these are master plants. Cannabis is good. I started using it when I was 15 and buying it wherever and using it like medicinally forever, I guess, or just to get high or whatever. But like once you start working with different plants, like, you probably realize that like smoking all day long and all night long is probably not the healthiest thing that you could do. And like if you took a big dose of mushrooms, it probably would tell you that, right?
Yeah.
So I try to remind myself of that as much as possible by doing that, those other, like ayahuasca, for example. And I try to remember, and I try to have respect with the cannabis. Like it certainly would be a vice for me. At times I could say so. The other stuff, I never turns into vice. It's like impossible for me because it's too powerful. You're right.
Yeah, you can't be eating mushrooms every day. It'd be a weird time.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I've been actually considering microdosing mushrooms. I've done mushrooms a handful of times and had some life-changing, amazing experiences, like things that have shaped me. But I've been really looking to do it on a daily basis. Have you ever done microdosing? How's it worked for you?
Like they sell bottles, bottles of like pills, 0.15 per tab. These ones are right here. Start with Blue Meanies mixed. Yeah, 120 milligrams proprietary blend of Blue Meanies, Jedi Mindfuck, Penis Envy, and Mexican Cub. 500 milligrams of lion's mane, 500 milligrams of cordyceps. And then you get others, like all of the different, this like 30 capsules per bottle, and they're 120 milligrams each. So one is a sub-perceptual dose. You shouldn't feel it at all. Actually, I think I may have taken one a couple hours ago. And it's just actually makes you focus a lot better and feel a lot better, really. So like that dose is like okay for my mom. I don't know if she wants to take like a couple of grams of mushrooms though. So for most of humanity, I think like this is a game changer. I invested in this company that's a bunch of different companies, but I only kept one investment, and they're like all about that exact product, I think, which is low dose, microdose mushrooms, for humanity at like $1 a dose.
It's the future.
Yeah. Herbal healing.
Yeah.
Or fungal healing.
Yeah. All of it.
All of the above. Well, Jon, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed having you on here. I hope that we can do it again in the future.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. Grateful. Thanks.
And this has been another episode of Cannabis Cum Laude. We'll see you next week.
Thanks to our friends here at Rockbox Recording and Production in Rochester, New York. They are a full professional podcast and video studio designed by a radio guy for podcasters. Audio, video, voiceovers, editing, whatever. Mouth off at Rockbox at rockbox.com.
You can follow Cannabis Cum Laude on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Cannabuzz. Type Cannabis Cum Laude into your search bar and you should be able to find us, but the links will also be posted in the episode notes as well. If you want to help support the show, head on over to Patreon, and that will ensure that we're able to keep the best quality sound and video coming to you on a regular basis. And if you liked what you heard today, please don't forget to rate and review the show.